And whenever you're ready.
Mr. Chairman and committee, thank you for your time. I know you had a long night and a long morning, so we appreciate you working this in, and I really appreciate it because a lot of people did travel a long ways to be here. This bill is, I'm Rudy Beat, State Representative for 59th District, and Carrie Engel is also a co-sponsor and has 560. She's a state representative also, and we have worked together for a long time putting these bills to get this to you. This is called the Residential Care Facility Notification Act. And basically, I won't go into, you're familiar with a lot of the history of what brought it about, but my role here is mainly to go through the bill with you if you have any questions. This all came as in effect because of 210-211, which allowed religious facilities to be unsupervised, totally unsupervised, and no input. That meant there was no background checks, no notifications of existence, no right to have eyes on the children, no fire inspections, safety inspections, etc. So our goal was to try to protect the children's rights and also at the same time protect the religious rights of the religious organizations that were promoting these homes. Because I truly believe, while we've seen some horrible stuff on the news and encountered some horrible stuff here in testimony, there are some very good homes out there also. So this bill is not designed to put any of them out of business. It's designed to enable that the good operations stay in existence. I truly believe personally, and have dealt with some of these, that the role they play in society is needed, and to the changes for some of these kids, this is their best option. So I in no way am contesting it, that they should all be put out of business. What the bill does generally is notification. It requires them to notify us that they are in existence. It's not a license, it's a notification. It also says that they have to do background checks. And you'll note throughout this bill, I'm not asking anybody to do anything that a good businessman or woman would not do. Background checks, safety inspections, fire inspections, keep medical records, and a method that there can be eyes on the children by going into the court and getting an order that says they have reasonable suspicion. More importantly, what the bill also does is has a paragraph in there that protects the curriculum of the school and the home, and we cannot, as a state agency, walk in there and say, we don't like you're teaching the Bible, and we don't like that you're putting too much emphasis on spirituality. We don't have that ability, and this is specifically put in there to protect that right, because it is a fundamental principle a lot of these homes operate on, and it is a fundamental principle that a lot of these children or young people who go to these homes, it is a fundamental change of how they can change. We know that some of these children are not at these homes because they were perfect angels. We know they have issues, and we believe that the spirituality of these programs allows a lot of them to see a different way of life, and I think that is a very important part of the program. So this, to me, this bill does nothing but require them to do what an ordinary businessman would do, and it protects these homes so that we don't have more bad apples get in, and we have a whole set of regulations on us that we don't want, and I don't think would be in the best interest of children. And I'll let Carrie talk about what they found and how we got to this point. I want to let her, I ask her to.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much. I know that you've had a long evening, so I really, really appreciate this. I am by trade a social worker, and I worked for the Children's Division for the state of Missouri for approximately 7.5 years in a variety of capacities. And so on an early or a late August morning, early September morning, when I read the Kansas City Star's article regarding a particular situation where multiple people who had preponderance of evidence findings for child abuse and neglect continued to have access to children and continued to have even more allegations of child abuse and neglect, alarm bells went off. I soon found out that there was an exemption for this type of facility with a religious waiver, and that there was absolutely no oversight. So when we talk about oversight with unlicensed facilities, a lot of people think about in-home daycares and unlicensed daycares. Well, they still have a lot of mandates and regulations that they have to adhere to, including ratios, background checks, discipline policies, etc. And that's covered in 210.254. None of those none of that section applies to these residential facilities. And so in essence, anyone can open one of these facilities. And we found that there had been sexual offenders working at various facilities across the state, people with numerous preponderance of evidence findings, and frankly, the type of people that you would not allow access to your children, let alone to have supervising your children. We found that there was this, what I refer to as a gaping hole in our child welfare code, where our child abuse laws and our criminal codes were not being applied to these specific situations. And I firmly believe, and I think that most of the people of the state would agree with me, that child abuse is child abuse regardless of where it takes place. There are situations where obviously we have children that have histories of past behaviors, even delinquent behaviors, and are in need of services. Oftentimes, though, when you label a child as troubled or as having behavioral problems, it makes people less likely to believe them when they then disclose abuse that has occurred to them. We say, well, that's a bad kid and they're a liar, and it feeds into that cycle of abuse. And so that's something that we've also seen. When after this happened in September and I became aware of this, I reached out to then Representative Sheila Solon, who was the chair of the Committee on Children and Families, and we held a special hearing in November to look at whether or not this was an individual incident or systemic. And we found throughout our 4.5-hour hearing that it did in fact appear to be systemic. The committee offered recommendations for bill drafting, and we started looking at language and working with child advocacy groups, the Department of Social Services, and even opponents of this type of legislation. We felt that everyone needed a voice at the table. And Representative Veit and I feel that this bill, some would argue that it doesn't go far enough. Some would argue that it goes too far. We feel that it's a very good start and it's a great compromise, and that it will put checks in place to ensure that the type of things that we've all seen in the newspapers over the last 6 months will hopefully never occur again in the state of Missouri. We're one of 2 states in the country who have this religious waiver where there's absolutely no oversight. The state of Alabama recently passed a law that is far more restrictive than this, and so we're seeing a lot in the states around us how this has occurred. And because we are one of the only states without exemptions, we've seen a lot of the entities that have been closed in other states come to us. And so that's where the bill came from, and that's what we hope to pass into law. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the presenters? Okay, Senator Shoup, please. I would request that, I know this is a very emotional topic, but we want to make sure that all the witnesses here have time to testify. So I will myself, give me a nudge if I get talking too long or asking, more than asking questions. So please, every committee, keep that in mind. I did forget of the last hearing, we did have Arnie Dearnoff also submit testimony for the last bill. We had Senator Wallingford. Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly make a comment. First of all, I appreciate so much the work and the fact that you came to my office to see if I had any questions or concerns, and that means a lot. So I just wanted to say thank you, and hopeful we're able to get this across the finish line.
Any other questions for the presenters? The bill? Okay, seeing none, we will go back and forth. Witnesses for, witnesses against. Could I please have the first witness in favor? And again, if you drove a long way, come up quicker or flew in, whatever. Please feel free to come up. And again, try to about 5 minutes is kind of a max if we can. That gives everybody a chance to give their presentation. Thank you. And when you're ready, identify yourself and go.
All right, so my name is, I just want to start and say thank you guys for taking this under consideration. My name is Alan Knoll. Just a quick who I am. I'm a survivor of these places. I went at the age of 10 years old. And for 5 years of my life, I lived in these places, in these homes. I'm not vindictive. I suffered tremendous abuse, but I'm not here to shut these places down. My story is irrelevant. I can't go back and change it. It is relevant for the purposes of making a difference, but it is not, I'm not here to shut anybody down. I'm here to stop people from having to go through the things I've had to, and I want to touch base and make it, and reach out to you guys and tell you a little bit about what happened to me and I'll be quick and brief because I know you guys have had a long day. But I was removed from my home. I was not a troubled child. I was 10. I had some hyperactive, more unwanted situation. There are a lot of people that go to these places that do have behavioral issues and do need reform. I was not one of those. But I was 10 years old. I was removed from my home, my mother, my father, my brothers, and placed in these strange facilities. I went to 2 of them, one in Mississippi and one here in this state for 2.5 years in this state as well. I won't even mention the names because it's not about the attack. From the age of 10 to 15, between the 2 places, and one of them, the facility admitted these things and have been found liable in court. I've had pit bulls sick down me. I've been held underwater. I have watched people be drowned and resuscitated. This is the severity. And I imagine some of you have kids or grandkids. Imagine what that's like. Being away from home and being 10 years old, watching that and being a part of that. And I know it sounds so extreme that it's not true, but please Google it. And one of the programs I'm going to talk about, Bethel Boys Academy. I will mention that name because it's not in this state. I'm not here to attack programs in this state. Bethel Boys Academy. Look it up. Look at what can go wrong. Look at how bad things can be. I lived in fear of literally dying for years. In Missouri, it continued. I went from Mississippi and moved to a program here in Missouri. My abuse did not change from one program to another, even though I went to a different state. Less severe in Missouri, but still tremendous abuse on a daily basis. Long-term effect, anxiety, depression, difficulty dealing with authority, self-worth issues. Anytime that I was 10, I never learned how to deal with anger. I was thrown against a wall. I was victimized, made it seem like it's not okay to have bad feelings, to have an attitude, to have a bad day. So for years I struggled. I made terrible choices in my younger years. All those things being said, nobody was there for me. Nobody was a voice. Not politicians, not my parents, not my family. I was on my own. And blame doesn't matter. But somebody needs to be a voice for these kids. These things happen, and we know it happens. Right now, we'll let due process run out, but we know that there's charges stemming in a facility here. We know that there's history of these things throughout. And so somebody needs to be that voice. At the end of the day, though, I'm fortunate to say, after years of struggling, I'm proud to be here today, to be that voice for the kids that are in these programs now. I don't do this to share my story. I do this because these kids need that voice. Somebody, be that voice on this bill. In my opinion, we could do better, but I'll take what we can get, and we can build on it, and we can be better for our community. I myself, I am a founder and co-founder of a nonprofit where I'm from, Seattle, Troubled Teen Advocate Group. We work to help heal these wounds that these facilities that have left unchecked. Sometimes you don't even know they're in operations, to help heal those victims from these places. We work with survivors. I'm a leader in this advocacy group. All these people that you're going to hear, they want to be heard. And I know that you guys have had a long day, so I'm going to stop talking and let them hear. But it's so important. And I know that Ms. Engel and Mr. Veet, we appreciate this being a bipartisan proposal, and we hope that we can get bipartisan passing this into law. So thank you guys so much for your time. It is so important to make a difference. This is your future. These are the kids that will be hopefully sitting where you're at if we take care of them. If we don't, if we don't take care of our kids, they'll be your drug addicts. They'll be your alcoholics because they're self-medicating. They'll be your criminals in your prison systems. Let's put kids, when they get older, in your positions. Let's make a difference in kids' lives. Thank you so much for your time. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. I'll be quick.
Okay.
If not, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have any questions to the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Again, if you didn't do it online, please just leave your witness form on the table.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. Right here?
Yep, that's good.
All right, thank you guys.
Okay, yep.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Okay, hold on, we're doing for and against. So first witness in opposition.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't.
No, that's okay. it varies committee to committee how we do it and how many people there are. And whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We've all had a long night. I'd like to cover some things that I think need to be in the scale when you're looking at this bill. My name is Woody Kozad. I'm a registered lobbyist. I represent CNS Corporation, which built and funded and funds Heartland facility, part of which is for children, there's another part that's for adults in recovery. Our late founder, Charlie Sharp, who died about 4 years ago, put $100 million of his own money into this and obviously cared deeply about children, or he would not have done that. You have a couple of documents the chairman was kind enough to send you that I authored, and they are based on a misreading of 210. So you can take those two documents and put them in your wastebasket, because they're of no help in going over this bill. Why are we here? So I see it one reason, and it is this, that, and I have to use this word, as you well know, alleged that we've had large-scale abuse at one, maybe two religiously operated residential care facilities. We've also had it apparently at a licensed facility in St. Louis, one of the larger, St. Louis area, one of the larger licensed institutions in the state, has been closed down, I think, in February after 2 years of investigation and digging. The reason we're here, as you will hear, is because there's a feeling there's a complete lack of control by DSS of religious facilities, license-exempt facilities, as they're called. Heartland is a license-exempt facility. The things the DSS would like are, I break them down to 5, 4A and 4B makes 5. Notification. My client already does that. It's been doing it for years. I mean, everybody in the state knows we're here and where we are and so on. So that's fine with us. We have no problem with that. We also notify everybody comes in of our disciplinary policy. They have to sign off on it before they can leave a child with us. It does include corporal punishment, but it outlines very carefully when it's applied, how it's applied, and what has to be done before it is applied. Health, fire, and safety inspections, we've been doing those for as long as I know. The state gets them. They know we do them. We have no problem with that. Criminal background checks. We've been doing this, as far as I know, forever, and we don't have a problem with it per se. However, and now we're getting to the point that we're most concerned with is due process. And I don't want to drag back the history of Heartland and the Department of Social Services and the juvenile officer, but I can give anybody who wants it a 30-minute DVD that will show you why a federal judge likened what was done to us to, quote unquote, the worst events of the 20th century. And the children were traumatized, and the DVD would show you that. They were dragged out of there screaming, holding on to each other, holding on to Lori Sharp. Charlie wasn't even there that day. And it was a traumatizing event for them. So what we worry about is due process. We worry about the constitutional rights of everybody involved, and that starts with the children. As I understand it, I'm not an expert in this area, when a juvenile officer is interviewing a child, if the child says, I don't want to talk anymore, the JO has to stop. And that's in the juvenile code or in the Supreme Court rules or somewhere. He's supposed to stop right then. I may be wrong, and I think probably Representative Ingle could correct me if I am. I'm unaware of anything like that about the DSS. So when they step into the JO's job, I'm not sure that protection is there. I'm not against that happening. You all need to know, though, that having a JO do this and having a DSS do it are two different things. We think when you do a criminal background check and somebody is denied a job in the state, that the appeal from that, and their bill has an administrative appeal, which is fine with us, but it's not clear that that is under the section we think it ought to be on, an existing appeal 210.152. And under that system, when they tried to put our people, over 10 of them, over a period of time, onto the central registry, we never prevailed in front of the agency. They were found guilty every time. We never lost in a court of law. So there's a problem there. And some professors at St. Louis U 15 years ago did a study which determined that the system at the division for putting you on that registry almost was to the point where you could put a blindfold on and toss darts. It was an ugly study by St. Louis U. So we just want that appeal there and make very clear what that appeal is. And it's an existing law in Missouri. Then we get to the most difficult part, which is the eyes-on part. I break that down.
Sorry, that's your 5-minute very quiet. We're going to need you to wrap it up.
Okay.
We don't have as many against, so if you wrap it up like that, would be good.
Okay. The first thing we do, I don't think their bill is tough enough on a facility that hides a witness, intimidates a witness or a victim, ships them out to some other place, gets them out of state. If they do that, if you did that in a criminal investigation, you could get up to 5 years in the penitentiary with no chance of parole. And I propose that that's what you do. If people are going to ship victims out of state to keep the law from looking at it, I don't know why that's different from shipping a witness out of state when you're investigating the stick-up at a convenience store. It should be a felony, and you should face a strong sentence. And when you go into the facility and show them the notice that you're investigating, that should be at the very top of the notice. If you tamper with witnesses or evidence, if you try and intimidate them, you can do 5 years. The final thing, I've been talking to both the sponsors. We've made a little progress in agreeing on stuff. Most everything we have is due process related. What's the standard you have to prove something by when you get into court? And then secondly, when can you do something ex parte, which means the party you're moving against has no notice you're doing it. They don't have a chance to appear and defend themselves and present their case. You can only do that, in my understanding of the law, if there is an emergency. And an emergency is the child is in imminent danger of great bodily harm or death or sexual molestation. The sponsors have been unwilling to include a ban on ex parte facilities under any circumstances
Okay.
like those.
Sorry, I appreciate it. Sorry, we do have to, I hate to limit people, but
Mr. Chairman, I understand perfectly.
I do appreciate it. Again, I would, we'll ask quickly if there's any questions, but if there's discussions that need to be, if you want a longer discussion, please, I'm sure Mr. Kozad would be more than willing to talk
Absolutely.
to everybody, as with any of the witnesses here, if they feel there's a longer need to talk outside of committee.
I'm supposed,
We're available.
Representative Engel and I are going to meet,
Okay.
by the way, in Kansas City and try and
Okay, so
work
are there any questions
some of this out.
for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next, for those for informational purposes, I think we have one person for informational purposes at least. Sorry, it's a little slow with this, having to do the hallway thing. Oh, thank you. Please, if you haven't done a witness form, please fill one out. When you're ready to go ahead, you have 5 minutes. Thanks.
Good afternoon, committee. Caitlin Whaley with the Department of Social Services. Thank you for allowing me to offer some informational testimony regarding this bill. So the Department of Social Services is the entity that investigates child abuse and neglect in this state. So there's just a couple of points I want to make, and I did provide some written testimony, and I'm happy to meet with anybody to discuss or answer any questions afterwards. So there's just a couple things I want to highlight. So the role of the agency is to investigate child abuse and neglect for the purposes of adjudicating the child abuse and neglect system. So that might be bringing a child, making a referral to the juvenile office to bring a child into the care of the state. But the Department of Social Services does not have the authority to remove children. That's a power granted to the juvenile office and in emergency situations, physicians and police officers, but ultimately the decision lies with the courts. And the department also does not have the authority to, the Children's Division does not have the authority to make referrals to the prosecutor or prosecute child abuse and neglect for criminal purposes. So I just want to make clear that delineation of duties. We do have a special unit called the Out-of-Home Investigations Unit, which is primarily what my written testimony refers to. It's a special team that specializes in investigations of settings outside of a child's natural home. So they are the entity that investigates situations at child care, schools, and residential facilities. And they have been They've outlined in this. I will say that this testimony was written up for me from my OHI team, and they are an incredibly hardworking group of individuals that have been working tirelessly to try to keep kids safe. And just to be honest, they're frustrated because they feel like there have been situations, and it's not specific to any one facility, where they haven't had the tools needed to keep kids safe, whether that be a bit of a discrepancy in the law, where the law currently says that if a parent is a non-offending parent, you have to have parental consent to talk to that child, which makes sense if you have a split household and you want to have consent of if parent A is an alleged perpetrator and parent B is a non-offending parent, you get consent of that parent. But in these situations, many children are from out of state. And you have to rely on the facility to provide contact information, and it's been a consistent snag that it's either hard to get that contact information, parents don't give consent to talk to children, or parents give consent conditional to a member of the staff of the facility being present, which when you have allegations of abuse and intimidation, kids aren't going to make disclosures. I won't belabor the point. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about this, or obviously certainly happy to answer any questions today that you might have.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for them? Senator Rader first. Sorry.
Thank you. So, and maybe my brain's not clicking yet with last night, but so did you say that you guys are not allowed to report your findings to the police?
So the law tells us to co-investigate. If there are allegations that might be criminal in nature, the law tells us to invite the appropriate law enforcement agency. That would be first the local law enforcement, or if they decline, could be the highway patrol, but tells us to co-investigate with law enforcement. But actually moving that forward toward a criminal prosecution would be would be outside of our control. Criminal prosecution, they might use our information in a criminal prosecution, but the police officers are normally the ones that they would be collecting criminal evidence, because we're not looking for necessarily the standards of a crime.
But so if you investigate so then whether the police have come along or not, and you find child abuse, or do you turn that over to the prosecutor? Or
we would turn that over to law enforcement.
Okay, always that's the process. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Senator Shoup, go ahead.
Yes, briefly. Thank you for being here, Caitlin. So do you feel like the legislation put forward here addresses those concerns?
I think it is a substantial and important step. Honestly, we don't know what we don't know in some of these circumstances, so I can't say that this will save every child from a potential situation, because there are still situations where people might be destroying evidence, or so I won't say that there isn't potential. It's not perfect, but I think anytime you've got a situation where adults are around children, you have potential for abuse. It was spoken to earlier that there's been abuse at licensed facilities, and that's true. You can find cases of abuse at licensed facilities, child care facilities, schools, healthcare facilities, everywhere. No one industry is immune from this problem. The question is, what steps are available to those of us tasked with protecting children to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. Senator Bratton, go ahead.
Thank you. So I guess I was hearing between you and Senator Rader, are you looking to have the ability to prosecute? I mean, is
No.
that what you're looking?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to make clear that there's been talk in the press and in the other side of the legislature, honestly, questions about why cases never moved maybe to criminal prosecution over the years, or why more wasn't done by the agency. And so there is a point at which there are not any more legal options available to the agency, and we have to rely on our other partners in the child welfare system to continue the process beyond that.
Okay. Now, we heard in the testimony prior to yours that a juvenile officer, if they're investigating or interviewing a child with potential abuse, if they say to stop, they have to stop. Is that the same? Do you guys fall under that?
I'm not juvenile officers are not my department.
Well, I'm saying,
but
does the department, people working within the department, if you're interviewing children,
I
do you
mean,
have to
certainly if a
do that?
child wasn't comfortable continuing to speak, we wouldn't push it. But I think the juvenile standard is more related to juvenile officers also deal with delinquency and criminal cases. It's not specific to child abuse and neglect. So there is, protections against not speaking without a lawyer or asserting your Fifth Amendment right for kids, just like there are for adults.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I thank you for your testimony. Being a former attorney for the juvenile office and doing many guardians, it does distress me and I have minimally seen lack of cooperation from the people that do law enforcement and or the juvenile office at times. So that is a distressing fact that's a little outside the scope of this bill, but I appreciate your making it clear who does what, that you are not the person that gets to tell somebody to file charges. So thank you.
And one last thing I did want to mention, it was brought up question about administrative review, and there was the previous witness pointed to 210-152. I want to make sure it's clear that 210-152 is the appeals process for making a finding against child abuse and neglect. So it would not be applicable to an employment decision.
Right.
With regard to the background checks. So.
And juvenile law is different than adult law. We don't adhere to the rules of evidence in juvenile law in many cases. The overriding thing is the best interest of the child. Juvenile officers actually work for the court.
Yes.
Which is a very interesting way we look at it. So thank you very much. I don't want to belabor it.
Thank you.
Next, we're in favor. Please come up. And be sure and leave a witness form if you haven't done it online.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I support this bill fully, and I'm hoping one day that these laws will be stronger to protect our children.
Ma'am, could you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, turn it off.
I'm Barb Patterson. I'm here on the behalf of the Roll-Off Legacy of Survivors. That these bills would be stronger one day to help our children. As you know, these homes have had a horrific history of abuse. It's gone on way too long. It's time for our children to be first over everything. The system failed me. It took 5 years for me to be removed by DCFS at the age of 11 for extreme abuse. I should have been protected in their care, but I wasn't. I was 6 more years of abuse. Later on, our home was closed for abuse and moved to Belton, Missouri. It is now in Pace, Florida. The boys were closed. They moved to Van Zura, Missouri, still open and running today. But they were shut down in Texas for abuse. Everywhere that children are, places, there needs to be oversight. Children do not have a voice. They cannot reach for help. Missouri is the easiest place for them to run to. I'm begging, please be the children's voice. On-site does not take away religion or beliefs, although I feel a child should have their own choice. Children do not run from love, they run to love. Every employer does background checks, except these homes. The people that's working with children, they should be number 1 on the list. Almost 40 years later, I still have night terrors, PTSD, and anxiety. The trauma in my childhood carried through my adulthood. But the worst was when I was 13. I was placed in juvenile detention for no placement as a foster child. I was in jail while my abuser still went on with his life, until the judge sent me to Lester Roloff Wayward Home for Girls, another 3 years locked behind a fence for no placement. I didn't have a choice Please give these children a chance. I was in 33 foster homes, 2 group homes, 1 state home, mental hospital, juvenile detention, to the Rebecca home for children. How many more children have to suffer, get hurt, or die? Why did it take another raid of extreme abuse of another ILP home? Again, I have done this for 30 years. I've been to state every time they raid one of these homes. To tell, nobody wants to listen to us. And it took another one, 100 and some charges. How many girls hurt again over a 10-year period of time? They make money off of children's hurt, trauma, and pain. We come out damaged. They come out rich. I was in the raid. The FBI talked to me. I didn't say a word. You know why? Because what? You're going to leave me behind? I would have had to deal with them consequences. Have you ever, as a child, lived and think every day, is this the day I'm going to die? I did. Please pass this law, and let's get some more laws stronger. Let's protect our children of today. What was happened to me, I cannot do nothing about. It's done and over. But why should these children suffer? I just don't understand it. You can't fight a dog, you go to jail. You go to prison for fighting dogs, but they fight these boys in these homes. They're documentaries. We have documentaries. We've done Washington, D.C. We've been to the Supreme Court, magazines, Netflix. We have been shouting this out for 30 years. Help us. I'm asking for your help today and the children. Thank you for your time.
Do we have any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Your witness, Mark.
Yes.
Next in opposition. Okay, seeing no more opposition, do we have anybody else for informational purposes? And seeing informational purposes? No.
Sure.
Oh, either way. whatever category you want to fit in.
Right. My name is Mark Gutchin. I am a retired attorney at law. I've been practicing in the area of child abuse and neglect in Missouri for over 30 years, and in Arizona for 5 years before that.
Sorry to interrupt you. We do have. Are you going to be for informational purposes? Because we have to clarify on our.
Yes,
our
informational purposes.
Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
I spent many years representing parents in juvenile court cases. I've handled countless cases. In 2002, I joined the Department of Social Services, and I retired from the Department of Social Services as the General Counsel of the Department of Social Services. For full disclosure, I still do some part-time hourly work for the Department of Social Services. However, I'm here on my own time. I'm not getting paid for this, and I want to make sure that my information is, the information and opinions expressed are my own and not the opinions of the Department of Social Services. I have been involved in every single case from involving these types of facilities, advised on investigations since I started in the Department of Social Services in 2002. And I know a lot of the folks around here, so I have worked on these facilities, on cases involving these facilities. I personally represented the Department of Social Services in litigation involving child abuse and neglect at facilities, or was the lawyer who supervised the lawyers who were representing the Department of Social Services in these facilities. I've also worked on legislation, proposed legislation, and worked on every bill since House Bill 1453 back in 2002 with all the reforms with Representative Hanway. So I've been involved. I want to say that this bill it's a bill that I would have loved to see back when I was involved in these cases. It is sorely needed. It is necessary. It is an important step. Because the abuse in some of these facilities is horrific. I have been involved in cases, in at least one case where a child died due to neglect in one of these facilities, and the legal impediments to and the frustration that the staff of the Department of Social Services had in trying to investigate and make sure that those kids were protected was horrific. Under the current law right now, the Children's Division has the statutory mandate to investigate reports of child abuse and neglect. But in my opinion, the Department of Social Services and the law does not give the Children's Division all of the necessary tools in order to effectively meet that mandate. This bill is extremely important step in moving this forward. And I support the statements that have been made before, but it does not, in my opinion, go far enough. It is not generally known, for example, that the Children's Division, even though they have the authority to investigate in one of these facilities, they do not have, even under this bill, the authority to ask a court to subpoena records. So if we are going to, the Children's Division, my former employer, is mandated to conduct an investigation under current law, we do not have clear statutory authority to even do an administrative subpoena or go to court to ask the court so that we can subpoena and produce the records of that facility on this child. And as a lawyer who's litigated these cases, those records are critical in order to conduct a safety assessments of the child's well-being. So this bill is extremely important. Secondly, it says that the bill says that it gives the authority to present the child to a Children's Division worker. But in a case of sexual abuse, the best practice is for there to be an appropriate forensic interview of the child done by a child advocacy center. And if there's sexual abuse, that child needs to be seen immediately through a safe exam. There is nothing in this bill that says that the court has the authority to, as part of this order, not only produce the child to the Children's Division for an assessment, but the court, in my opinion, should have the authority to order that the court should order that the child should be presented to a child advocacy center or a hospital for a sexual assault forensic examination. It's not clear in this bill that these kids need to, that there needs to be off-site interviews of these kids. I could go on forever.
Your 5 minute very quietly rang up here. Would ask a quick question that your ability to get subpoenas for things like records deals with your co-investigative partners, such as the juvenile office, correct?
Well, the answer is really no, and I'll tell you why. Is because a lot of times in these situations, is that even if we're co-investigating with law enforcement, there are large parts of this state where law enforcement will tell the Children's Division, we don't have staff to help you with this. You do your investigation, and if you have evidence, then come back to us. We'll work with you. And the Children's Division does not, and so that puts the Children's Division team in an impossible catch-22. They can't get the evidence, and the partners are saying, CD, go get to the evidence. That goes to the fundamental misunderstanding of members of this body and law enforcement that Children's Division does not have all the tools it needs to do the complete investigation, and that leaves children in danger in these facilities.
Okay, I appreciate your response. Do we have any questions for Senator Rader? Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and I feel as though you have a wealth of knowledge from both sides of this. And so I'm wondering, and I'm so sorry if I'm not finding your testimony right at the moment, but would you, if you haven't already, would you put together just a bullet point list of the things that you see that would be an enhancement to this bill that would help maybe cover some of those gaps that you're talking about, just so we can have that before us without, since we're in a crunch for time?
Understood. I'd be very happy to do that. Again, making it clear that these are opinions and suggestions of my own, and not the Department of Social Services.
If you submit them to the committee, we'll distribute them to the entire panel.
Thank you.
Be happy
I
to.
appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Senator Shoup?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I know that you testified for information only. I want to, and I know that you found that there are things that need to be included in this bill based on your opinion. Do you think this bill inhibits the ability to go forward, or this bill is a move in the right direction that starts to open the door on making change? Do you have an opinion?
Oh, this
on it?
bill is a move in the right direction. Absolutely. It's going to make change. I wish I had, when I was representing the department, I wish I had this language back then. Really, really important bill. Even without any other suggestions, it would be my opinion that this bill will make a difference to protect kids.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, seeing none, thank you. Please be sure and leave your witness form if you didn't already do it. Okay, any last call? Anybody in opposition? Anybody in, well, we did information. Sorry, we're now up to favorable again. Those in favor, long distance, come on in, are up.
Good afternoon. Thank you for
Excuse me, if you could, if you testify, we do have some people outside that want to testify, so if somebody wouldn't mind after you've testified swapping out, I think you can still hear it in the hallway, but I would appreciate that. That way we get the people in that want to be able to testify. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emily Adams. I was a Bethesda girl from 1984 to 1985. I'm also the National Support Survivor person for National Heal Online, which means I take survivor support calls from all of the programs from many years. So I hear about all the programs and all of the damage that they cause. I'm also representing Colton Schrag, who could not be here today, of the Agape Boys. I wanted to say about the Agape Ranch program, they were just caught removing, destroying documents, and Missouri troopers had to go in and remove like 6 bags of evidence. So you don't destroy documents when you're under investigation unless there's an issue. That's something to think about. Also, one of the Cedar County deputies is married to the daughter-in-law of the owners, and every time you go into Cedar County, you risk being arrested. I can attest to that. It also makes it very difficult to interview the boys and get a clear answer, because they usually have that deputy in the room for when the boys are being questioned. Who's going to answer correctly when they know they're going to get stomped afterwards? I would not. I was questioned by the FBI when I was in my program. I didn't answer truthfully because they were pinching me while it was happening, and I knew I was going to get hamburger butt because I didn't think they were going to take me. I lied, and I stayed a whole nother year in Bethesda, which was in Petal, Mississippi. It ended up being closed in 1986, and if Mississippi in 1986 is, y'all are pretty damn tough on these kids, you gotta go. It's bad. So I'm gonna read my little speech. I am here in support of Mississippi House Bills number 557 and 560, which establishes provisions relating to the protection of children. I hope that the Senate Committee on the Seniors, Family, Veterans, and Military Affairs will listen to the survivors and supporters of this bill during the hearing scheduled for April 14th. Passing this legislation is an important step towards accountability and protecting vulnerable children in Missouri. This important legislation helps stop and prevent child abuse in important ways, including registering programs and removing religious exemptions for boarding schools and programs. It ensures state authorities know of children being placed and have access to investigate and check on their welfare. It provides state authorities with the ability to help children via CPS and emergency services and hopefully shut down the abusive programs. It deters abusive programs from relocating to Missouri. My abusive program, the minute they were kicked out of Mississippi, they were here, and a boy was murdered at their program. I don't know if you remember in 1990s, Wilfred Cheryl was killed at Mountain Park, which was in Patterson, Missouri. That was the same people that ran my program. And then 2 boys were sentenced to life without parole. So they lost their whole life to Mountain Park and my abusers. The emergency provision ensures that the state authorities can immediately investigate abuse allegations and intervene appropriately. These programs are wrongfully claiming the use of the First Amendment to shield them from accountability for the abuse that has occurred. These programs, such as New Bethany, Circle of Hope, Agape, Bethel, Bethesda, to name a few, have wrongly claimed their religious programs with education in a boarding school setting. Survivors of these abusive programs, boarding schools, have credibly testified that these facilities are exploiting religious exemptions. I hope you will support the passing of HB 557 and 560 as an important step with stopping and preventing child abuse in Missouri. Please remember that this is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and closing places such as Agape is a great step in preventing that. They believe in the use of conversion therapy, which includes like forcible sodomy on gay teens, and it believes they will convince them not to be gay, make them straight. And don't know if you've ever been sodomized forcibly, but I have. I was kidnapped, and I was sodomized, and I can tell you, it's not going to make the boys straight. But that's what they're doing. And they're in there investigating by the AG. That's why I go out there, and I did get arrested. It wasn't fun, but I'm going to go back out there again. I'm probably going to get arrested again. Until this place gets shut down, there's over 100 boys there, and I don't even know how many are at Wings of Faith yet. I haven't found out. But please, get some of these rules in place and get these kids out. They're going through some of the same things I went through at Bethesda, and you don't want kids like me. You don't want people like me turned loose on society. They're going to cost you money. They're going to cost you time. They're going to stretch your prison system. They're going to stretch your mental health system. They're going to cost you more money than you ever thought possible. So please, no more survivors. Shut this place down. Get them out of here. If you can't regulate them, stop them.
I
Sorry.
apologize you can't go longer in your testimony, but we have the 5-minute thing. Do we have any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. And we have no opposition or information purpose, so next in favor, please come up. And be sure and identify yourself, leave your witness form, and go ahead.
Thanks for having me. My name's Joseph Askins. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm a survivor of Agape Boarding School. Recently, I looked at the man as a father, Boyd Householder, and I'm sure that name rings a bell in everybody's ear, but he recently got charged. I was the one who initially placed one of the calls. I had some footage of things that had happened, very disturbing. But I guess what I could say is, if you could imagine, I'm sure everybody in here probably has kids or nieces or nephews that you care about. Put yourself and put your kids in those programs. Imagine if one of your kids had an issue and it was the last resort. These places need to stand. They need to stay open for people of last resort, but they need to be ran through a strict regimented routine. Just like any other state-ran facility, there needs to be background checks and everything else that everybody else has mentioned here. And I look at Agape and I think, what a wasted cause of everyone that came there and had underlying issues from prior, and they lock you up. I know animals that get treated better than the students at Agape. If you hit an animal, guess what? You go to jail. And for so long in this state, in a lot of states, it was okay. We don't see it. We don't have any physical evidence of it. But guess what? Those days are done, because now there's media. Now there's the media's attention to bring it to everybody's light. We're appreciative for what you guys have done, but it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop here. And I spent probably quite a bit of money on coming down here from Pennsylvania, okay, just to let my voice be heard. I don't care about my story. I'm a survivor. I'm a fighter. But there's other people that can't even fight right now because their voice isn't heard. And the things that I went through, the abuse that I have gone through at Agape, okay, the screams behind closed doors. You don't know what happens behind closed doors. And the corruption that happens there, paying off sheriff's deputies. I can't prove that, but it's kind of obvious. You know, every single time that a call has gotten placed, Householder knew that something was going on. He knew that he was going to be warned. And it's not, his son works two towns over as a police officer. And I've had death threats against me by the second-ranked best sniper in Vietnam, okay? Because I stood for what was right. You know, and I could sit here and I need to watch what I say because I'm, you know, in a public eye right now. But it was not easy walking past this man with 2 loaded firearms. It was not. And I saw him pick up a girl and slap her across the face and said, "You will call me sir," trip her, and then throw her down in a pile of horse crap. That's the stuff that goes on behind closed doors. That's the stuff that still happens at Agape. The rape, the sodomy, it never happened to me, but I'm sure it's happened. There's cases to where it's actually been proven that it's happened. And they just shove it underneath the rug. That can't happen anymore. That's all I've got. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Next in favor? Sir, did you leave your witness form or did you don't?
It's right there.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
yes, sir.
Sorry. Again, yourself.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman White. My name is Vicki Dudley. I'm the Executive Director for the Child Advocacy Center in Joplin. Children's Center of Southwest Missouri is a not-for-profit organization providing a safe, child-friendly setting for the investigation and treatment of child abuse in Southwest Missouri. As a child advocacy center, we provide 4 critical services. We do the forensic interview, the medical exam for sexual assault and physical abuse. We provide trauma-informed counseling services, and we do prevention and outreach services. Our interviewers and medical exams are conducted by specially trained individuals. During forensic interviews, a multidisciplinary team is watching via closed-circuit TV. That team consists of law enforcement, children's division, juvenile office, medical professionals, and the prosecuting attorney's office. We're one of 16 nationally accredited child advocacy centers in the state of Missouri. Over the past 5 years, the center has been involved with investigations involving residential facilities for troubled youth. Some of the allegations that we've heard are withholding normal food as a punishment and forced to eat cold refried beans or bread and water for weeks at a time. We saw a child just last week that had lost 20 pounds in 7 weeks, a 12-year-old boy. Children lose their phone privileges and are unable to contact their parents for weeks or even months at a time. All phone calls to parents are recorded and monitored by staff, so kids have no way of disclosing the abuse that they're experiencing. Children are injured and not properly treated by medical staff. Children are forced to do hard labor as punishment or very difficult exercises for several hours at a time. One case that we were involved in was several kids, as a punishment, were left out in the cold and ice without coats, shoes, gloves, hats for several hours, walking around in circles. There's a distinct difference between discipline and punishment. Discipline is the practice of training someone to behave in accordance with rules or a code of conduct so they can adopt desirable behavior for future reference. Punishment is inflicting suffering in someone for their past behavior. To discipline means to teach. To teach is to show and explain how to do something. One does not need to punish to teach. Kids are being punished at these facilities. This legislation would improve the oversight of facilities to better protect children. Currently, investigations by Children's Division, law enforcement, and the juvenile office are hindered. The Child Advocacy Center model is best practice. However, the lack of clarity in our laws has led to a failure to protect kids in these facilities. For example, best practice dictates that children are interviewed once by a specially trained forensic interview in a child-friendly setting away from the alleged perpetrator. In recent investigations, it was not possible to provide best practice. Kids were interviewed in a highway patrol car in the parking lot of the place where they reside and then returned back to the hands of their abuser, because the laws that are in place do not allow Children's Division and highway patrolmen to remove kids from the premise, as my colleagues have explained. So kids weren't allowed the opportunity for an interview by a specially trained forensic interviewer in a child-friendly setting, or a medical exam wasn't allowed to be performed. So allegations of sexual abuse were not permitted to have any forensic evidence collected. Kids who had injuries were not able to get treated medically. This is unacceptable and does not follow best practice. It's our role as adults to make sure kids are protected. We want better for the children in our state. House Bill 557 would require the facility to produce the child upon reasonable suspicion and to produce other children with concern for their safety and bring them to a desired location, such as a child advocacy center. I speak for our organization and other child advocacy centers throughout the state, in favor of this legislation and ask for your unanimous support.
Thank you for your testimony. I had the honor, I guess I would say, of being the juvenile officer when Children's Center first started. It's grown and matured tremendously.
We have.
I agree with the best practices. It is from a former juvenile attorney and attorney that does juvenile law in the old days. Do we have any questions to this witness? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next in favor? Again, if we have anybody that's further away, please come on up. Just going to zip it quicker. And go ahead, please identify yourself.
My name is Kaylin Rohde. I'm a 25-year-old survivor of the troubled teen industry, currently residing in Missouri, pursuing my neuropsychology degree through Park University. I'm sure that my story is similar to most, so I'll keep my adolescence brief. I was 15 years old when I was sent to Trinity Teen Solutions. It's in Cody, Wyoming. The attitudes, issues, and behaviors that got me sent to Trinity were, to use an assignment term that they had us write papers on, was probably not uncommon for most teenage angst. I snuck out of the house a couple of times to go to church events. I did poorly in school because I was sexually abused at 9 years old for 2 years by our 50-year-old babysitter. So my grades suffered, my attention suffered. Anyways, truthfully, I was thrilled to go to Trinity when my father told me about the horse program that he was sending me to. It was a chance to get away from the constant bickering of my parents and learn new things in a non-classroom environment, which was always my downfall. As soon as I walked into one of the 3 tiny cabins on the over 200-acre property in the middle of nowhere and was told to strip my clothes, but to prop open that door, and from now on, you're on level 1, and that door will always be open when you're in the bathroom. I knew I was in the wrong place. I could tell instantly that these women, who were maybe in their 20s, who were staff members, younger than I am now, didn't know me, and they thought I was a bad kid. And they were going to give me no understanding. I could tell that I was not here to heal from childhood sexual abuse. I was a prisoner. My father was still down talking to the ranch owner, and I asked to go see him just one more time. Absolutely not. Nope, he's gone. You're gone. You are here. You sit down here. You eat this food. And that first night, I wasn't able to finish a giant pizza that they fed us, because that was one of the only large meals that we actually got. So I sat there until about 10:30 at night when the dishes and everything was done, and waited because I couldn't eat. And got up that morning at 5 a.m. During my time there, I was tied to a goat, meaning that every time I went out, when I was outside, I had to drag the goat named Clark with me. And when I was done with my challenge, as they called it, I had to write a 2-page reflection about what my time with Clark taught me. This was how they ran everything. When you were on the dish challenge for 3 months, meaning you did all 14 girls' dishes, the dishes from making all 3 meals that day, and the prep dishes for the next day's lunch, also meaning you were up along with whoever was making lunch for the next day until about 10:30 at night. Considering we got up about 5 a.m. to a grueling day of manual labor, this was close to torture in the form of extreme sleep deprivation. This, coupled with monitored meals and the use of condiments like salt and pepper as a level 3 privilege, was used as both a scare tactic to dehumanize us to both ourselves and to one another. During my time at Trinity, I was put on chair for 10 weeks. This meant that I was to sit in a metal folding chair facing a walled corner all day long, from dawn until dusk. Absolutely no exaggeration, okay? No speaking, nothing to do but listen to the sounds behind you. And when you were the last to do anything from using the restroom, to showering or getting your meals. Usually this meant there were days at a time where I used the bathroom twice a day, once when I woke up and once before I went to sleep, also last. I was personally put on chair 2.0, where they moved me to a separate cabin from everyone else. There were 3 cabins, so I was in the one that no one was in, for the last 4 weeks of my challenge. This was, again, a challenge. It's how they presented it to our parents, who paid $7,000 a month. A month. Okay. The girls who had to carry horse troughs to represent their bad behaviors and the bruises on their legs. How they explained the chart around my neck that said I spoke in a baby voice, which actually just meant that one of the staff members didn't like how my voice sounded, so she forced me to speak at a lower octave. All of these things were supposed to make us better. Typical time frame from someone to be on level 1 was about 2 months. Level 2 was anywhere between 9 months to 18 to 22 months. Oh, yes, depending on your attitude. Because all of our communication was monitored, our once-a-week 15-minute phone calls and once-a-week letters, it was impossible to tell our parents the severity of anything that was going on. Not that they would have likely believed us if we did.
Ma'am,
Time?
your time's up. You're kind of reading your testimony you gave us.
Oh,
I do
sorry.
believe so. We do have the testimony, but if you wanted to sum up in like 30 seconds or a minute, just
Sorry,
give us a quick
putting me on the
summary and
spot,
then
now my
we swing into the
brain's
next
like,
witness.
what do I say?
Thanks.
Other than that, yeah, you have my testimony. I'm sorry. Thank you for your time. I'm in favor of the bill because, oh yes, so at one time at the ranch we had CPS come and they asked to talk to us. Our staff members were, they found 2 of the level 3s, so the highest level. They've been there for the longest amount of time. And right before anyone comes up the driveway, they have us take off our charts because they're in direct violation of what we're supposed to do. The girls who carry around troughs put their troughs away where we have a field day. They make it fun, and none of the other girls have any idea what's going on unless you're the one talking to CPS. Other than that, yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions to the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next in favor? Okay, while you're walking up, could I have a show of hands of who's left to testify? Okay, I apologize. I miscounted here a little. We're going to have to drop your time a little bit. If you can try to be really succinct, I apologize, but we could get kicked out of here if somebody else walks in. So please be succinct. And if you've done written testimony, let us know you've done it and then give us a summary of your written testimony. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shelva Thomas Jackson. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm here today in support of B557 and B560. In January 2017, I sent my son to Masters Ranch. It was told to me that he was going to have good grades, they were going to make sure that he keeps up with his school, that he was going to be able to play football, that they were on a working ranch, and so we're pretty happy about this. I sent my son there. I found this letter, and I don't know, the enemy waste oil on it in the suitcase, and I can't read it. But what I did read this morning a little bit had me in tears the entire morning trying to get dressed. And a little bit of it is said is that, Mom, I want to make you proud of me. He said that you got to get me away from here because I would like to go to, it's another Christian, it's another academy. I think that place would be better. Then here he says that they put their knee down in his neck and his face was swollen. So it all got blurred out. But I happened to read the part where I talked about the last time how I was hired. I sent my son to Masters Ranch and I went to work there because I believed in their program, because I am retired from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a licensed chemical dependency counselor. So my thing is that I work on stopping recidivism at every given rate. So it was like, I'm losing my son. So who else? Best, my father is a pastor, but he's deceased. I'm a single mom. David Bosley says that he can work with my son. But on the end of here, when I started reading this letter, and I lost my glasses and everything, but it says, when I worked there, I had to help the boys write good letters. I didn't know what that was until the other day when I found this. And I worked there, and so we're sitting there writing letters, and then I go into the medicine room, and I see all the letters like this sitting on the desk, and it's supposed to be going out for Father's Day. So I'm looking at the letters, and I'm like, oh, they're not saying nice things. Well, how did my son's letter get out? Because he didn't say nice things. He said that they put their knees down in his neck and his face. That's what it said. So David comes back and he says, I had a talk with Loyal tonight. Make sure he knows he will be safe here. The young man, Max, who is a gentleman that was molesting the girls in Washington, D.C., that's over the Masters Ranch over in Washington, that's the Max that was abusing my son. He said that he had a talk with Max, and he says that sometimes he can get a little something on holding his temper. I think this is what this letter says. And when I read that, and I know I read this letter, but because their gift in Gab is to convince you that this is the solution.
Ma'am?
Huh?
Please wrap it up. We've got
Okay.
more witnesses than we got time.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up, but I don't know if I ever have to come back. But I gotta figure out a way on getting past whatever this level is, because if we don't do anything, it's just not gonna work. You're gonna end up hurting more people. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. And hurt people will be continuing to hurt people. And I say, I hope it's not your kid or your grandkid or your neighbor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next.
Thank
you.
Okay, any questions for the witness? Wait, ma'am. Got a quick question on the end?
Quick question. So, did you come from Houston just for this?
Yes, ma'am. I flew into Houston, and I drove in, and I spoke in February. I drove from Houston in the snow for the first time. I'm so serious about this.
I can feel your passion, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to help write programs.
Thank you, ma'am. Next in favor, please.
Good job. Just place this here.
Yeah, and please identify yourself, and go ahead and, again, try to be succinct. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Thank you for having me. My name is James Griffey. I was a student at Agape Boarding School from 1998 to 2001 when I graduated. I'll be really brief. My first night there, because I had said the word gosh to a staff member after he expressed one of the rules to me. He told me not to use God's name in vain and to do push-ups. I tried to do the push-ups. I was unable to finish the push-ups. My arms collapsed. I said gosh again. This staff member, maybe in his mid-20s, threw me on my back, started punching me in the face and headbutting me, saying do not use my God's name in vain. It took 3 staff to get him off me. That was my first night there. But once again, that happened in '98. I work with a podcast called the Hammer Podcast, where we interview survivors that have gone through these programs. And we've spoken to a lot of the Agape boys that went to Agape. And we went to interview a kid that left less than a year ago. And he was expressing these same things that were going on, these restraints for hours at a time, being held down, kids being thrown around, kids being hit. I thought it stopped. I thought this was an old-fashioned thing that happened back in my day. It's still happening. And we interviewed another kid that left less than a year ago. Then another one left 2 years ago. And they're sharing the same stories. There's nicknames for the type of abuse that they do there. And it's still happening. I flew out from California for this just because I feel like it needs to be told that it's still happening. We appreciate everything you guys are doing, that you're trying to pass these bills, you're trying to make an effort, trying to make a change. We do appreciate it. But just know that these people are powerful, that are running these schools. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of positions within the community. They're experts at covering up abuse and silencing people like us that do speak out and discrediting us. So thank you for everything that you are doing. I just wanted to express that to you, and I hope I didn't go over time. If that's all right.
You actually have a little bit more.
I'll take some questions if there's any questions.
Do we have any questions for the witness? Senator Shoup, go ahead.
It's not actually a question. It's a comment to you and to others who have come and told your stories. To just say thank you. You have gone the extra mile to get here and to be here before us, and it is so appreciated. And our chair, even after we were in session till 6 in the morning, wanted to meet because we knew that some of you were coming here. Your stories, your experiences are horrific, but they matter, and I think that you need to know that you're the ones who are going to make the change, so that the next set of young kids. Every time I hear you talk, I think of my children when they were the ages of that you were, and so my heart goes out to you, and you're brave and you're strong and courageous for being here, and I just want to say thank you to all of you.
And on that note, and just so you know, this is not, I talked to those survivors, it's not about us and what we went through. It's the fact that we know that there's kids in these programs right now that don't have a voice and no one's speaking out for them. And so that's why we're here. Like, we appreciate the sympathy and the
I know that.
So
And I
thank
know
you.
that you're here because it doesn't change what happened to you, but it will
Yes.
change the future. And so while we vote to make the laws or present the bills, it is people like you who are brave and courageous who tell the stories so that we understand the impact. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Next in favor?
I'll be real brief, you guys.
And please, if you haven't done a witness forum, do, and tell us who you are and who you represent.
My name is David Bauscher. I co-founded Trouble Teen Advocate Group with this guy right here, Alan Knoll. And we both went to Bethel Boys Academy together. I was 16 years old when I went there. Alan was 10. I was into drugs. I was stealing. I was a runaway. I skipped school. I needed to go somewhere. He was 10. He was a 10-year-old. He was a rambunctious child. In Mississippi, we had kids come from all over the state that were ex-gang members, had all sorts of back situations, and something needed to be done. They needed some sort of help. They needed to be in some sort of situation. And then we had kids like Alan that was 10 years old. When I was there, I became what was called a leader, and it was my job to discipline kids and to actually perform these punishments based on what the owners told me to do. And I saw child after child after child come in that shouldn't have been there. And at 10 years old, you go in and you come back way worse. When you're supposed to go to a place to get help and to be helped, and you're sent as a 10-year-old child with murderers, with drug addicts, with sexual deviants, the list goes on and on of these people that really needed true mental help and maybe needed to be facilitated, it does way more damage than it does good. And this has gone on for 30, 40, 50 years. So you can imagine, yes, I truly agree, like some of these people said, there's places that can help kids, but at the same time, imagine how much damage has been done to child after child after child after child after child over the last 30 to 40 years. And I said this when I testified last time in front of you guys real quick. I know this is a religious state, and religion is very important to you guys. I know so many people, because we run Trouble Teen Advocate Group, I know so many people that want nothing to do with God. I myself am a Christian, but so many kids that have gone to these facilities say, I want nothing to do with God, I want nothing to do with religion, because these people that were supposed to be Christians were abusing me, and I want nothing to do with it. There is power, life-changing power in religion, God, and faith, but there is also so much detriment that can be just destroy people's life and destroy them to ever have that opportunity when people abuse that right. And so you guys are a state, a religious state. You have the right to hold these facilities accountable. What they're doing, how they practice, what they do, the loopholes, everything. It needs to be held accountable. There needs to be checks and balances. You need to prevent people like Alan from going there at 10 years old and experiencing what he did. It's just, it's extremely detrimental to kids. So that's all I'm going to say, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next person in favor, please come up.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jessica Seitz, and I'm the Director of Public Policy with Missouri Kids First. We're the state chapter of Child Advocacy Centers, so I have the privilege of representing organizations like Vicky's here at the Capitol every year. And it was actually Vicky who brought this issue to my attention, now we're looking at 8 or 9 months ago, and about some issues they had seen down in Southwest Missouri. And I started digging around, trying to figure out what was going on. And that's when I found that lack of oversight of unlicensed residential facilities in Missouri has been an issue for decades. Under a statute that's been on the books for almost 40 years, Missouri has a full religious exemption for any oversight. So according to a review of National Conference of State Legislators, only 6 states have any type of exemption like this, and we're one of 2 that require no additional regulations or licensing to operate these boarding schools or facilities, whatever you want to call them. Over the almost 40 years, the exemption's been in place. Horrific cases have prompted calls for action, but the last time was almost 20 years ago in this legislature. In fact, I was able to find a series in the Post-Dispatch from 2002, got it right here, from the library, that I'm happy to share. We were called one of a handful of states then that do not require oversight. We were called a haven then in 2002. So here we are, 20 years later. More abuse has occurred in facilities where there's no oversight, no mechanism to check on the safety of kids, in a place where they live full-time, 24 hours a day for years. More states have tightened their laws, and now Missouri essentially stands alone. As facilities have found refuge here, we know that at least 7 schools have moved here from other states after they've strengthened or improved their laws. And 4 more have started up in Missouri, inspired by those that have found refuge here. I submitted formal written testimony, and I'm happy to go through what this bill does, the different pieces, but about notification and things that have been shared before. But I just want to say that I don't want to see another 20 years go by as an advocate, and I think it's time for this legislation. Thank you.
You're obviously testifying in favor of the bill. You think the bill will at least start to address the issues?
I do, and we've really had a roll up our sleeves. I'm incredibly grateful to Representatives Veit and Engel, who we brought this problem. We found all these, we're digging through statutes. We've had to hammer some things out. We really think this is a great start. It's really notification. It's wherein these facilities are. Like I said, I go into all the sections, the minimum health and safety, and really if failure, there is a mechanism to shut them down.
If you would like to hand up your St. Louis Post thing, we'll be happy to copy it to the rest of the panel. I think there's going to be some interesting people seeing that.
It shook me up. It took some Googling, but we found it thanks to Mizzou's great library.
Did you submit that previously?
I did not, so I can find it.
If you'll just leave it on the table, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy.
I'll put it with my testimony.
And any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, can I have a show of hands of who's left to testify? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Please come on up next. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kelly Schultz. I'm the director of the Office of Child Advocate. The Office of Child Advocate is the third-party reviewer to Children's Division. I really appreciate you guys have been here incredibly long time and passed on committee, so I'm going to be super fast. I just want to go with what this bill is not. I'm going to flip it a little bit. This bill is not taking away licensing exemptions. We absolutely still allow religious affiliations to not be licensed. We do have religious organizations that are licensed and operating in the Missouri under full licensure as well. That's still a possibility. This is not a registration like the other states that allow exemptions. All the rest of them have registration, which is an ongoing relationship. This is not that. That is just a notification. And finally, I'm just going to go straight to the sensitive topic. This is not church versus state. This is not state versus the church. And sometimes I take that a little personally when that is an accusation. I'm a person of faith. I'm a member of the church, and nothing changes for me Sunday morning than it does Monday morning, just like many of my colleagues in child welfare. This is state versus people that are abusing children, no matter what setting they are. A previous speaker mentioned it. I spend all day long reading abuse and neglect reports. That's my entire job. That's what I do. I come and talk to you guys about abuse and neglect and things that turn your stomach. But seeing it done in the name of God and the potential of not only abusing and traumatizing a child, but separating that child from God for eternity. That's not church versus state. This is state versus people hurting children in every setting. What this bill is the bare minimum. Tell us you're here and operating in the state of Missouri. Run background checks. Again, bare minimum. Let us have eyes on the children when there's an allegation of abuse and neglect. That is something by contract that we require of every licensed facility in the state of Missouri. So when there is an investigation, let us see the children. And finally, we can shut you down as a state if you are a bad operator, if you have POEs in operation. With licensed facilities, the state can do a variety of answers. We can shut down somebody's license. We can remove children or put a placement hold on them. So we have a variety of answers when something happens in a licensed facility. We just need an answer when it's in an unlicensed facility. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Bratton?
Just a comment. After hearing all this testimony, and unfortunately, these aren't people of faith that are running these. These are evil monsters
Absolutely.
They're counterfeits of true Christianity. I hear agape, that's godlike love, and to hear this sort of abuse, I think of Christ when he spoke of harming these little ones. It is better for them to be thrown in the deepest sea than to harm one. And to think that these facilities, hide beneath, the religious aspect of it. Government is instituted by God to be that justice arm, and we are to protect those kids no matter where they're at. So, we've got to do whatever we can do.
I 100% agree and really appreciate your comment.
Any other questions? Senator Shoup?
Thank you. Kelly, thanks for being here today. You have reviewed some of these cases?
Yes. So in my role as the third-party reviewer to Children's Division, when these stories started to come to light, I was requested to do a systemic review regarding the Circle of Hope investigations. I did issue a report and findings, and I have that if the committee, and it's a packet, so sorry. I have that I presented to the House of Representatives on November 9th. I had 4 areas that I recommended. The first one was looking at license exemptions for religious facilities. I proposed looking at Mississippi statutes. Again, I was looking for something that balanced that religious curriculum, religious-based treatment, but also preserving our role in protecting children. So I presented that information. Barriers to investigation, something that was previously talked about, the functionality of an MDT. Children's Division alone is not responsible for providing safety of the children. Across the state, we have a wide variety of MDTs and how they function. One of the recommendations of the Task Force on Child Safety is that we have routine conversations about the functionality of MDTs and quite frankly, have tough conversations. When we have a breakdown in MDT, when somebody is interfering in somebody else's role, when somebody's not sharing records, when somebody's trying to do somebody else's role, really having a facilitator go in and have those tough conversations.
Excuse me, if you'd be willing to submit your testimony
Absolutely.
again, we will transmit it to everybody on the committee.
Sorry, it's a book.
I don't mean to interrupt the inquiry, but we do still have a couple more people that want to testify, and we have overran almost an hour. So
Absolutely, I appreciate
Nobody's
that.
wanting to come in the door, but I want to make sure we get everybody.
So these are the findings that I presented to the House on November 9th.
Thank you.
Right, well, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy. And Senator Shoup, I'm sorry if you have other more specific, please. Thank you very much. Next, in favor, please come up.
Hello, my name is Emily Van Schenkoff, and I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Children's Trust Fund, and we are here in strong support of House Bill 557. When we first learned about the stories that you all have heard today, it was from the Kansas City Star, and we were shocked and alarmed. And as someone who's been a child advocate in this building for more than 10 years, it really took me aback. What we've heard today, these stories are unconscionable. What these kids and what these folks who have testified today, what they have gone through, just defies human understanding. And it is incumbent on us to think about what we can do at this moment to make things better. One of the things that I've learned in my career as I've reviewed so many cases and heard so many stories of children that have been abused is that we have to accept and understand that there are predators and bad actors out there, and they want access to our children. We have to operate under the understanding that they are looking for ways and places to hurt our children. As a society, as both parents and as lawmakers, it is up to us to put up barriers between predators and bad actors and our children. And the more barriers we put up, the more effective we are at preventing child abuse from occurring. What we have right now in Missouri state law is a glaring chink in a fence. If we think about this as a fence and a barrier that we want to stop these predators from coming through, there's this hole, and they're coming through the fence, and they're coming to Missouri, and they are hurting our children because of our weak laws in this area. For far too long, we have discounted, we have ignored, we have silenced the voices of children. These individuals are beautiful, precious children that we get to walk this earth with, that we get to nurture. We have ignored them. We have let them be hurt. And we have an opportunity right now to make a change. The Kansas City Star has pulled back sort of the curtain on what is happening in these facilities, and now we have an opportunity and an obligation to act. And so while hearing these stories is so deeply painful to all of us, I would like to say I think this is a hopeful moment. This is a moment for us to make a really big change, and I hope that you all feel excited about your opportunity to be a part of voting yes on this bill, for being a part of the Senate that we hope will pass this bill, and for fighting for this for our kids. We are in a really good place right now to make big changes, and I know that's the reason that each and every one of you ran for office, to come here to make change for people in your district and in your communities, and to make our a safer place for children. So I just want to say, I think I want to celebrate a little too, because this is a good day.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, next in favor, please come on up and identify yourself and leave your form. And
yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Craig Stevenson with Kids Win Missouri. Just wanted to go on record in support and thank Representatives Veet and Engel for bringing this to you. The stories, as everyone has said, are just crushing. The one thing I will highlight on a policy end, we at Kids Win really kind of pride ourselves in advocating for background screenings, and while it seems very, very minimal, it's a big deal. Senator Rader has, in past sessions in this body, has addressed when people volunteer in schools and are in one-on-one situations with kids, that we have to have them pass a background check. This is even more basic than that, and so I just would encourage and thank you for having me.
thank you very much. Any questions to the witness? Seeing none, next in favor.
Good afternoon, Casey Nail representing Foster Adopt Connect. Nothing to add, just really grateful for the sponsors for bringing this forward and for your all support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Seeing questions next in favor. And last shot, anybody opposed or anybody for informational purposes? Okay, we do have a significantly long list here of the people that did not testify but that submitted things. Excuse me for my chopping up names here. Amanda Householder / O'Brien, Ryan Boyer, Megan Fulkerson, Esther Song, Joshua Cook, Ryan Irkin, Renee Mazer, Tyler McClay, Kay Musquiz, Chelsea Moladondo, Paris Hilton, Megan Drew, Jessica Fuller, Cotton Schrag, Desiree Sergici, Gina McNulty, Arnie Diernoff, Emmanuel Monaron, thank you, Jessamy E., Tarjan Campbell, Robert Buckland, Catalina DeVille, Caitlin Whitaker, Marcia Hazelhorst, Chanel Meyer, and D. Scott Penman. We had nobody submitting testimony against. We had one witness giving information which actually came and testified. So that's the other list of written, at least supports, if not testimony, that we got from them. Okay. Seeing no other, bill sponsors were, if you have any quick closing comments? Because we were a little, okay. Good closing comments. Thank you. I would make a motion that ends the hearing on your bill. Would make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second? Have a second? We are adjourned.